Hey guys. Whoa. Hey guys, how we doing? My name is Daniel Ritz. I'm a board member here for the Trueblood chapter of Trout Unlimited. We're gonna just give this one more second to let people filter in, but we're gonna stick to our timeline tonight. Intro the meeting a little bit, and then we're on to Troy, who's got a fantastic presentation. We're really excited about the next couple of weeks. So would encourage you guys to sign in, drop your name and your email into the chat of whatever platform you're watching on. Can I get some thumbs up, comments, likes, things that you can hear me, see me all right? All right, Andy. Cool. Well, we're going to stick to our line here. This is a little bit of a new format for us, so we're going to be trying to hybridize our in-person meetings and general meetings, as well as a little bit of the appeal of doing it from home and making sure that everybody's staying safe and making sure that everybody's comfortable. So I love seeing people tune in. So this is great watching that number increase here. So really excited for tonight's meeting. Wanted to remind you guys that this is our monthly general meeting. You're going to be hearing from a few of our board members, but we would love to and encourage you guys to join and support your local chapter, as we are conservation partners in a wide variety of projects, some of which you'll hear about tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to our chapter president, Daryl. I'm going to bring you up here. Everybody's got to give me a second with these things. It takes me a minute to click through everybody. Daryl, can you say something so we can see and hear you?
Yes, sir.
There you go. Take it away.
All right. Good evening, and thanks for joining us tonight with a presentation with the Trueblood chapter of Trout Unlimited. Like many organizations, we have struggled through the pandemic at trying to figure out how to maintain activity and engagement with our membership. Thanks to some great skills and imaginative from some of our board members, namely Daniel Ritz and Chris Keeley, we believe we've got a format moving forward that's going to be very productive and hopefully very entertaining and engaging as well. Before we jump on to that, we're going to give you a few brief updates of things going on in the chapter. Jane McKevitt will speak to you about upcoming programs over the next few months, and you'll want to make notes about the dates and the topics, as well as the speakers coming up. After that, Andy Brunell will talk to you about current and upcoming volunteer projects, as well as a special event featuring Chris Woods, president of Trout Unlimited. Followed by that will be Blake Schnebley talking to you about our youth engagement programs. The presentation tonight should be very interesting. A local person who has done a lot of fishing here and has a lot of skills, and should be a very interesting program. But first, let's go to Jane with upcoming programs. Jane, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Daryl. 1 second.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm Jane McKevitt. All right, program updates. Next month, we are going to have a program presented by Richie Carmichael, and he will present his program on April 13th. And the title of the program is going to be Leveraging Technology for Fisheries Conservation. Something fun to know about Richie is that he received the Trueblood Scholarship for outstanding graduate work when he was at the University of Idaho. Now he's since continued his accomplishments, and he is now the Associate Director for Professional Services for Biomark. Biomark was a locally founded innovative technology company that's now a subsidiary of Merck. And as Richie says, Biomark has been in the forefront of technology development and deployment for monitoring of in-stream and river environments with projects worldwide. So Richie's presentation is going to be about the variety of technologies and applications used in fisheries conservation, primarily in the Columbia Basin and ESA listed endangered species such as Chinook salmon and steelhead. So stay tuned for that presentation. It should be great, April 13th. Real quickly, the May presentation will be by Rick Williams, notable researcher, biologist, expert on salmon and salmon restoration. He's going to talk about the history of salmon management on the Columbia, and then he'll discuss new visions and a roadmap for salmon restoration. So put May 11th on your calendar too. So hope to see all of you and enjoy this program tonight.
All right. So Jane, just wanted to make sure April 13th and then May 11th are our next meetings.
Right.
Fantastic. Yes. All right.
And probably,
yeah, appreciate all the work. Super excited for the lineup of meetings that we have coming up. And Jane's been working really hard to get those dialed in, and we're all better for it. So thanks a lot, Jane. All right. Now we're going to go. Andy, take it away. Conservation projects and updates.
Good evening, everybody. This is Andy Brunel. I'm treasurer for the Trueblood chapter. Had a couple of conservation projects we are working on or launching that we just wanted to inform membership about. And if you are interested in lending a hand, you can reach out to me. You could leave a message on the YouTube or the Facebook interface, or reach out through email. We have been working with the Harris Ranch Wildlife Mitigation Association on work at Warm Springs Creek, which is a tiny little stream that goes into the Boise River directly across from Barber Park. It's about a quarter of a mile or so downstream of the Eckert Bridge in East Boise. And we are working to improve the stream depth and width, make it less wide and deeper, put more shade on it with plantings of willow and cottonwood. We've currently been working with Riverstone School, and we have a student who's leading a project on March 19th. That's Saturday on March 19th. And probably on the 18th, we'll have a small crew that will do some gathering of cottonwoods that need to be moved to put in place. We're going to be doing some cottonwood cuttings from some trees that are a little further upstream. So if you're interested in jumping in on this on Friday the 18th or the 19th, please get a hold of me. That's the first project. The second project is one that we are exploring with the city of Boise through their Adopt a Habitat program. And some of your board members for this chapter met with City of Boise staff in the field. We are looking at adopting Marianne Williams Park, the riparian area along that park area at the Boise River, to basically lend our volunteer time and efforts to do things such as wrapping some of the trees to prevent beaver from topping the trees if they eat through the trunks. We would look at removal of invasive or noxious weeds, of which there are some in that riparian section of the park, and any other bank stabilization or other work that we in the city would agree would make sense for the river to be done. So this is just at the early stages. We've done some exploration with the city. They have this program called Adopt a Habitat that they have started, and so we have put in for Marianne Williams Park. We expect that probably 4 times a year we will have volunteer projects out there, and we will notify members in advance for your option to participate in these projects. So keep an eye out for that here in the coming months. The third thing that I wanted to cover is an announcement that Trout Unlimited CEO Chris Wood will be in Boise and is going to be holding a public meeting, public gathering for Trout Unlimited and others interested in attending. It will be on Thursday, April 28th at 6:30 p.m. at the Riverside Hotel in Garden City, the old Roadway Inn. If you are one of the people who have been around Boise for a long time, it was also a Red Lion and a Doubletree and some others, but it's known as the Riverside Hotel. Chris will speak about salmon and steelhead, and it will be at 6:30 p.m. followed with a cash bar afterwards, reception. And it'd be great for everybody to come out. By late April, we'll probably have some nice weather and a nice evening with the CEO of Trout Unlimited. So those are the three announcements that I had for this evening. And Dan, I will kick it back to you.
Thanks a lot, Andy. And I did put down those dates on there, and you're going to see a lot more information about Chris Wood's visit and the dates and times circulating through. Definitely would encourage anybody to follow the TED Trueblood chapter, and we'll be sharing that information. Idaho Trout Unlimited has been really active and doing a pretty incredible job on their platforms as well. Seeing a really refreshing program from that. So just heads up, guys, I see some people noting that they're interested in projects or interested in attending different events. Feel free, please, either message us. You can email the generic email or drop your email here in the chat, and we will be sure to follow up with you because we will have record of this. So stoked to see everybody fired up to get involved, though. Thanks a lot, Andy. Next, we're going to move on to Blake with some updates on our youth programs.
Thanks, Daniel. Welcome. Thanks, everyone. I would say the kind of phrase right now for Woolly Buggers and Trout Unlimited efforts with the youth arm is restarting. We're kind of finding traction again, and we're finding our new normal. So that's a little exciting. There's a lot of dates here to note. We will be sending out an email next week to the entire TU membership. And so if you're on the email distribution list, you will have all of this information next week. If you're not, drop your name in the chat and we'll make sure to get you the information that you're asking. April 12th is our first Woolly Buggers meeting back this spring. It's a casting activity at Kristen Armstrong Municipal Park. You can contact myself or Jane McKevitt to volunteer. It will be in next week's email. It's a pretty good spring activity for our younger kids to come out and practice casting and prime up for summer fishing. April 30th is the next date. That will be our Clayne Baker Memorial Fish Out or Fishing Day. That's at Julius Kleiner Park. We always need more volunteers for that. It's a great day. We spend the afternoon fishing a small pond in Julius Kleiner Park for sunfish. Woolly Buggers have a great time. We will have that also in the email. The really important dates to mark your calendar for are June 27th to July 1st. That's when we're hosting our annual trout camp. We do need volunteers for camp. If you have a Woolly Bugger who's a dues paying member, they should have a lottery form in their email and have already filled it out. And next week's email will open it up to the rest of the public. So if you have a kid or a grandkid interested in getting in fishing, this could be a great time to apply for the lottery. After that, we take the summer off as per usual. In the second Tuesday, which is our normal meeting day of September, we have our restoration day at Esther Simplot Park. We did partner with Trout Unlimited and the city of Boise to adopt that section after we kind of adopted caring for it for so many years in the past. This relationship has become official as well. And so we have a few events set up over the course of the year in addition to that meeting at Esther Simplot. And then in October, we're back at Idaho Fishing Game Headquarters building, second Tuesdays of the month, doing fly tying and presentations as if COVID, unless COVID changes our plan. But right now, that's our plan. So we're getting back to normal, and second Tuesdays of the month are our meetings every time but August. Dan, I think that's all.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Blake. It's cool for you to have a lineup of things coming up. You know, I think it's been a minute for that, so it's exciting.
It's been a while since we had a queue. Yeah, we got a good queue.
For sure. Thanks a lot, Blake. Definitely reach out, check out Woolly Buggers. You guys have a Facebook page. Is probably your.
We have a Facebook. We update that regularly, and anybody that wants to be involved with a 8 to 18-year-old youth can be added to our email distribution list as well. So just drop your name in the chat and we'll get you on that list.
Cool.
You're not already there.
Thanks, Blake. We're going to jump. All right. Without further ado, I'm going to bring up Troy, tonight's guest. How you doing, Troy?
Doing great.
So working in conservation, I feel privileged to be able to do this as a full-time job. And I am always astounded at folks that do an equal or better job as volunteers and that do all the things that you do. Just contributing to your community over such a long period of time is something that I know that I personally strive to achieve and be able to look back on one day. And I know that a number of members of my community do. I just want to thank you for being here tonight. Just quick background. I'm going to let Troy speak for himself because nobody could do it better. But Troy is an experienced angler, an esteemed author, and a fervorous conservationist. And we're really excited to have his local knowledge but expansive understanding to shed some light on something that we were joking around a little bit before this talk that's a little bit of a fun mystery, and we're lucky enough to have it here. And without further ado, of Boise Valley fly fishers and a number of other things, I'm going to hand it off to you, Troy. Thanks again. Thanks so much for being here.
You bet. Thanks for the invite. So I will mention as we go, if people have questions, I can't see you here, use the chat and you can ask questions and we'll try to work them in as we go versus try to hold them to the end and we won't remember what you wanted to ask. So please ask away and Daniel will help relay those on to me. Okay. So it's timely to be talking about squallas because it is squalla time here locally, right? And you know, I like to call this the hidden hatch, and I call it the hidden hatch because it goes out on without most anglers' knowledge. And we were joking about this just before, as Daniel was saying, because is this a real hatch or is this something made up by the fly fishing industry to just sell us more stuff, you know? And that's kind of the way I felt about squallas for a long time, right? Unless you know where and when to look, you might not ever see a squalla unless you're fishing a river like the Yuba or other rivers that have huge hatches, right? But I'll tell you, the trout know they're there. They don't miss them, right? So today I'm going to share some of the things I've learned and the secrets about how to fish the squalla hatch, right? I started chasing the squalla hatch. I can remember going back and on the Bitterroot in 1995, I think was the first time I went after squallas over there while I was working on my master's up at U of I. And you know, we didn't really hit the hatch, and I've hit salmon fly hatches in between, and you know, it's just like lights out when you hit a salmon fly hatch on, you know, and big fish coming for big flies, and I kept looking for it with squallas, and I never found it, right? And one day I was fishing on the Wahi. And I'm walking down a bank and I spooked a 2-foot brown that was laying so close to shore that it's unbelievable. He swam over, there was maybe a hula hoop size of water that had boulders all around it, like kids will set up, right? And he had swum over the rocks into that water, and he was sitting along the edge, and I spooked him as I was walking this riffle. And I was like, wow, that brown trout's way in the shallow water. I wonder why, you know? And so I sat down and I had my lunch or a cup of coffee, whatever, and thought about it. And while I was there, I saw a female skwala literally just moseying along the rocks at the edge of the shore. She got to the edge of the same pool this brown trout was holding in. And she went into the water and did this dog paddle, literally a dog paddle, swam across that, got up to the top of the rock on the other side, shook herself off like a dog. You could see she had a big wad of eggs on her back side. And then she went into the water and dog paddled away. She didn't fly. She didn't flutter. She came in from the side of the shore, went out about 10 feet, floated down and laid her eggs, and then swam back to shore, right? And I was like, wow, I've not been fishing the right water, you know? And that was the day that I started figuring out how and where to fish squallas that we're going to talk about today. So I want to thanks to you for inviting me. Jane came to this presentation that we did at the Expo this year and liked it and asked me to come talk to you. So I'm glad to be here and share some stuff with you along the way. Please ask questions as we go. So a little bit about me. I can get my focus right here. Sorry for the multi-flip. All right, this is me. So I'm a native Idahoan, and I'd like to say that I've been fishing since the day I was born, and by that I'm serious. My mom was had twins, didn't know it at the time, and we were a month premature, and she was on the water fishing in Idaho when she went into labor. My dad didn't believe her because fishing was good. It's like, come on, Penny, you're just false labor pains again, and then her water broke, right? So literally, I feel like I've been fishing since the day I was born, right? I'm addicted to steelhead and spey. I love spey casting. I love swinging a fly. I really like getting into the hatch that we're going to talk about today. I've always collected insects and brought them home. It got me into making these bug templates that Nate Brumley later looked at and said, hey, we got to sell that, right? So we turned it into a Bugometer and an article for Fly Fishing magazine called American Angler. So it's been a lot of what I like to do. You see the Fishing Man license plate on the river, that's me, right? I sometimes was doing these seminars for Mike Sandiford at the Northwest School of Fly Fishing. This was actually developed for him on at the beginning of COVID, but like 2 days before the seminar, the state shutdown happened. So, I didn't ever get to present it there. So I'm getting to present it to at the expo and to you guys instead, right? And I'm also, I am a member of TU. I'm not as active in TU, although I've been a member of TU for a long time, ever since the local chapter started. I've been into the Boise Valley Fly Fishers as I retired from HP in the last year or so. I've been able to have time to work on more conservation projects there. So I'm the conservation director, and we've got some great projects underway. I encourage you to check out that club as well. They're both fantastic organizations to be aware of. So enough about me. This is the article that ran in American Angler. Size matters, gotta love it, right? Size matters because most anglers statistically are guessing by 1 or 2 sizes off in the fly, based on a informal survey we did at the Western Idaho Fly Fishing Expo 2010, right? I got a bunch of people, several hundred people going by to guess sizes of bugs in vials, kind of like these things, flies, and everybody was off by at least a size or size and a half, unless your name was Dave Tucker. He got everyone right, but everybody else was wrong, right? So if you want to copy this article, I have reprint rights. You email me at my BVFF conservation, and I'll send you a copy, so you can take a read. It's a pretty good article, I think. So a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. Again, ask questions as we go. So this is because right now I'm talking into this black hole. I can't see anybody's faces, and it's necessary, but I don't like this kind of presentation style. But we're going to talk about the stonefly life cycle. We're going to talk about how the nymphs are specifically important on this hatch. We're going to talk about the adults. Yes, there's a difference between males and females, and I'll show you why it's important. We'll talk about how do we hunt the squala water we want to fish, right? What water temperatures are important, and then look at some examples of hatches across the West and specifically here locally, right? So we'll go through that, ask questions as we go, okay? So as we were joking early on, if you've gone after squalas, I wish I could have people raise their hands at how many people have found a skwala on the river, right? Because most people haven't, right? But for me, it's a highlight of the spring. Fish the water's getting warmer, they're hungry, the rainbows are putting on weight to get ready for spawning. Those trout can be, they're unmolested a lot for a while, and it's the first chance to throw something other than a tiny midge, right? You can throw a pretty good sized fly out there and catch a fish, right? At the same time, like we said, is it mysterious and overrated? Well, maybe, right? It's definitely mysterious. A lot of people, that's because people just try to fish it like it's a salmon fly hatch, and that doesn't work, right? So we're going to kind of break that down for you today, right? So stoneflies versus mayflies. Mayflies, right, they swim to the top and then they emerge at the surface. Stoneflies actually crawl out to the edge and lay their mate on shore, then return to the river to lay eggs. So it's a different emergence cycle. It's very important that we understand they crawl to the edges, right? Salmon flies live 3 years, right? Skwalas live 1 to 2 years, depending on which book you read. I think they're 1 year here locally, but I'm not positive. But they're usually not very visible. They hide in cover. They're under rocks. They're in bushes. Again, those bugs aren't flying around visible to you when they're laying eggs like they are the rest of the salmon flies are, right? They don't flutter their wings. They jump into the river from the side and dog paddle. You won't see them unless you're looking, right? But again, trout know they're there. One thing on the nymphs that mention is nymphs are actively growing through the winter. They go from about a size 12 or so in October, November, up to size 6 or 8 by March, and they're probably one of the most active nymphs in the river in the winter, which means they're a good nymph pattern to have on in the winter. So like a small Pat's rubber legs is a great anchor fly, and that's one of the reasons. I remember years and years before I knew what squalas were, I always collected insects at the rivers, but I'd be like, wow, there's a bunch of golden stones here at the bank. I wonder why all of a sudden in the winter they're over here. Well, it's because they were migrating, right? The nymphs actually, they look like golden stones, and I didn't know any different 20, 30 years ago. But the squalas, like you can see in this photo, they have really long tails. I don't have a picture of a golden here, but you know, the golden stone nymphs are short, you know, maybe a quarter or less the length of those, and they're much more robust, little horns for tails. They're two-toned. They both look the same that way, but squalas, they migrate to the shores late February, early March, depending on where you're at. And that is a great time to fish, right? You can see how they're two-toned. They're brown up here on the top, right? But if I flip that guy over, he's kind of creamy, yellowy brown, tan, depending on your river or where they're going to be, right? So I like a two-tone fly. Some of my favorite flies be on the next page, but this is a run on the South Fork of the Boise I like, and the nymph migration is literally, it's under what happened right now, and I call it the invisible migration because you never see it. It's not like a bunch of deer went through here and left sign for you, right? The fish follow these nymphs in from more center river and all the way to the edge, right? So normally those nymphs are in the center cobble of a riffle, right? Is where you'll find most of them, but late winter, early spring, depending on your point of view, right about now, they actually start moving to the shore, right? So I don't know, does my cursor show up here all right? Somebody tell me, Daniel?
We got you. We can see it.
Okay, so in a minute, I'm going to show you a video of rocks pulled up from right here, right? So when I turn this screen over, you're going to see a rock that was right here. And it was probably almost the end of February, a couple of years ago, right? So it's important to fish the structure and stuff this time of year as those nymphs are migrating. Here's that rock that I said I turned over, right? Just looks like a rock along the river. But if I turn it over, voila, look at all those squalas. You turn this rock over a few weeks before, there weren't any squalas here. That was a very boring video. So, but this time of year, that's how you know the squalas are staged to hatch, right? So when you get to the river, right? My mouse is very too active. I want to start that video one more time. Maybe, maybe not. There we go. My apologies for the scrolling. Again, if you go along the river and you want to know squalas are about to hatch, turn over a rock right at the edge of those riffles, right? You can also see at the top there's actually a October caddis. How about that? But you'll find those nymphs staged when it starts to become time, right? Cool, right? At least if you like bugs like I do, they do. They don't bite, so pick them up, take one home. Some of my favorite patterns are two-tone patterns, right? You've got that light, dark, flashing as the tumbles, like a George's brownstone. If you're into weaving flies, is cool. This Sanchez's Biot bug that is on the bottom part is one of my favorites. You kind of make a yellow, thin yellow body out of yarn or floss, and then you run a couple of biots, brown biots down the side. You can put rubber legs on it. I tend to go with soft tackle and a bead, right? It fishes really, really well. These nymphs are really slender, so you don't want a fat body. In fact, this one's probably a little chubby. You want it to be thin, right? If you fish this in the winter, I like to do a purple fly in the winter. It's a little more visible. I do a Pat's rubber leg purple in the winter. Pat's is good now too. Just go to a mottled olive color, and you'll have money, right? So those are some of my favorite nymphs. Mercer's always got great patterns. His is a little harder to tie, but these two are easy peasy.
Hey, Troy.
Yes.
Just a question.
Yes.
Talking about nymphs, are you going to be dead drifting these? Are you swinging them? Are you stripping them? Just because these are, highly migratory, or, how are you working those nymphs when you might be fishing them?
That is a great question. I tend to dead drift. If we go back to this water picture, right? I like to dead drift. I start really close to shore. It's not a bad idea to have some unweighted patterns that you can fish in this shallower water, right? You don't want to walk out. You don't want to. So this is a sweet lane right along here. You pick up fish on both sides of this, but you don't want to wade out and just try to fish that, because you're spooking fish. And those fish can be anywhere in this section here. So you want to fish it out and dead drift it until you get to some of those seams, right? Later in the year, later in the emergence, I'll fish a dry with a dropper of an unweighted Pat's rubber legs, for example, is really good. I think you asked me earlier, could you swing it? I think you could swing it slowly with a trout spay or something. When I say these flies are migrating, I mean they're crawling. They're not making it across that expanse in a minute or two. They're taking days to traverse that, but they're getting tumbled in. They're tumbled into they're walking across. They get tumbled by the current, and then they get flushed downstream. So they're dead drift. If you've ever picked up one of these guys and dropped them in the water, they're like this. They don't move, nothing. It's like suspended animation until they hit the ground, and then they go scurrying, right? So dead drift is my preference. And I tend to indicator nymph this a little bit more because I don't want to get too close to the fish, and it allows me to fish a little further away from myself, where a lot of times I Euro nymph. This is one case where I still put on an indicator. And when you're nymphing, there are other insects that are really active this time of year. Blueing olives are hatching, so put a dropper of a blueing olive on there. Like a thread Frenchie, and midges are out, so put a dropper of a zebra midge or something. That feel you good, Daniel?
Oh, for sure, absolutely. Thanks a
lot. So one of the things that will clue you in to a hatch, it's time to fish a dry, is the thermometer. All insects have a preferred range of water temperatures where they'll start and stop hatching. Midges don't like to hatch until temperatures get up into the low 40s, blueing olives, the mid 40s. Now, that's not to say they won't hatch outside under that range. You just won't have a very dense hatch, right? Skwalas will start to emerge when you've had a number of days that are in the mid to upper 40s. Doesn't mean all day, but you've gotten there during the day. So for me, I check the temperature when I get to the river. And then I fish in the nymph, and then I check the water temperature maybe around noon. Okay, it's getting closer. And at 2 o'clock, yeah, okay, we just crossed 44, 45. I put on a dry fly. I haven't seen a single skwala. I go up to the top and I start searching my way down the run, and I almost always find a fish when I do that. In fact, a couple of years ago, I caught a skwala on the earliest day I've ever caught one on the South Fork of the Boise, only because the water temperature was warm enough. I was like, well, let's put a dry on, and I couldn't believe it. So, check your water temperatures. They'll tell you. Different stretches of river have more solar exposure, so you will have microclimates, particularly on the Oahe, where a stretch will get warmer than another. So if you learn those areas that have south facing sun, which is going to be actually on the north side of the river, you're going to get more solar gain over there. That spot I was showing you on the previous photo, we'll bring that picture up again in a minute, but the North Bank fishes a lot better than the South Bank, right? There are some gauges that you can find online that'll give you some ideas. USGS and Bureau of Reclamation have some amount of water gauges. For example, you can find out the water temperature coming out of Anderson Ranch versus down at Neil Bridge, right? But most of the gauges don't, right? But it's a place to start, but you really need to carry a stream thermometer if you're gonna make that call. It'll help you know when all of those major hatches are going to happen, not just squalas, but it's really helpful for squalas. Okay, so these are gauges, USGS. I've highlighted a couple of them. They give you the temperature in Celsius, but when you click it on it, it'll bring it up and it'll convert it to a Fahrenheit graph for you, right? So you can see some of those temperatures there. So again, things to be looking for to know if the hatch is happening. We turned over a rock. We saw that there were bugs at the shore. Cool. Have any of them hatched? If you start turning over rocks just a few feet from the river, and look for rocks that are flat, big and flat. I mean, something we're talking that's a good 9 inches, 12 inches, round and flat. Something, if you're a bug, you would crawl under to try and hide, right? You flip those over, you might see what you thought was a spider scurry away. But if you were paying attention, that might have been a skwala. And you'll see these shucks like what we have here, right? This is a turned over rock, and here's a skwala shuck that has crawled out. And in fact, it was a male, right? So this shuck and this male came from the same spot, turned over a rock, saw this bug crawl away, grabbed him, right? You'll notice the males have short wings. They're not capable of flying. They hang out around the shore and wait for the chicks to show up, right? I mean, they're there to mate, right? And they emerge first. So they're much skinnier and a size smaller than the females. So we'll show you a picture of the females here in a minute, and they carry an egg, so they're more round, right? So, you don't need a big long wing for this guy, and it looks more like a nymph with a little bit of a wing pad, really, is all this thing looks like, right? So you want to turn over these rocks, look for, right now, if you see anything, I've heard a few rumors of a couple of squalas that started on these warm days before we got to cold snap, starting to pop. So they're there, they're waiting. The males will come first. So again, as you're fishing your patterns, you want to have the smaller ones. We'll go through sizes. You want to have your smaller, sparser patterns now, and later we want to have a bigger flies with egg sacs. We'll talk about that in a minute. So here's a picture of a female on top. You can see that caviar, juicy caviar, right, on the back. And it's important to tie flies that have that, because most of the females on the water have that caviar bit, right? You can have some that don't, but have more that do, right? The thorax color, it really varies from drainage to drainage. The South Fork of the Boise and Hawaii tends to be this yellowish tan color, right? And the females definitely have more underside color than the males. And then the Bitterroot, they're more olive. The Big Hole, they're actually kind of brownish. So it helps to know that drainage a little bit, but size matters more than color, but it does help to match the color as well, right? And then make sure you have some females with egg sacs, right? So again, this is a male, same male upside down. You can see he has some yellow, not a lot of yellow, obviously no egg sac and a short wing, right? Very, very thin. Most fly patterns that tie squalas tie them way too chunky, right? You want a thin body, and even the females have very, very minor wings compared to most steelhead, most salmon flies, right? But those males are patrolling the edge right now, looking for the females. And even though they don't go egg laying, they get washed in. And if you don't spook those fish because you were careful on how you approached them, you can catch some really nice fish early in the hatch on these males right close to shore, right? Females, right? They're going to come out a week or more after the males. Now the hatch is really staggered. Like we've got this warm weather last week, a few bugs started hatching. So we have a few that are starting to get ready, but most of them are still under the water. They'll wait for the next warm up, then a few more will hatch. We'll have another cold snap, right? So it kind of depends on every year. It's different, right? But the game is afoot. Right now is the time to be going looking under rocks, right? And as we talked about, these girls don't fly to the river and drop in the middle of the river like a golden stone or a salmon fly. They crawl in from the edge. You have to fish the edge, right? Water's so shallow that you cannot believe it, right? So here's that same shore we were talking about earlier, right? The same thing, right? That water over there is money, right? And you want to look for runs that have riffles like this, because that's where the squalas are. And then you're going to look for these bankside edges and fish the afternoon when it's warmer, right? Look for those shucks. On the Waihi, you'll actually find shucks on the lower parts of the branches, just kind of like a salmon fly or golden stone shuck, but as well as under rocks. On the south fork of the Boise doesn't have as big of a hatch as the Waihi, and I almost always just find them underneath rocks. I don't find them willy-nilly laying around, right? So check that afternoon water temperature. You know, if it's above 45, tying it dry. You know, stop fishing way down at the end here, and move up towards the head, even above the head. Fish will move way up. You won't believe it. I'll cast a dry squala with a zebra mitch dropper, and I want it to be in the money when it gets tumbled down here. So I'll throw it way up here thinking, okay, I've got drift time. And then before it even gets down there, a fish has taken it. And you know, there were no fish there early in the morning when water temperatures were 39, 41, right? But when they get to 45, 46 degrees, they'll start moving up, right? So we're going to talk about stalking the edges, right? This is that same bank, right? I often catch fish on squalas here. It's classic. It's nestoriferal. It's got slow water. It's got good solar exposure, right? But the fish are really skittish, so you can't be noisy. If you fish from above, you're probably going to spook them. Not to mention pull the fly out of their mouth when they come after it, because it's just really hard to avoid that. And even if you hook them up, you didn't get a good hook angle. So I like to stalk from below. Keep your feet out of the water, or very little if you can. This is particularly important on the Waihi, because we still have brown trout eggs that, you know, those late spawn in December fish. So those eggs haven't hatched yet. And even the ones that do, there's alevins in those nests. And squalas and brown trout like to spawn in the same water. So both for fishing as well as the fish, you know, it's good to be cautious on weighting. Don't line fish. You're going to use a longer leader so that you don't even have hardly any fly laying out, and you're going to cast up, right? Work that slowest water that's close first. So in this particular case, I took a fish right there where that red X is, right? And then a fish right next to that big rock. I mean, he just came up and literally sucked it off the side of that thing. So again, these fish are really close to shore, right? Really shallow water. You'll spook them if you're not careful, right? So this was the first fish. That was the fish that was hanging right in that first spot. A nice spring South Fork of the Boise rainbow, right? So if you can be quiet and stalk those spots, and get your adult drifting down, you know, I like to stand out. I like to reach out and do a reach cast from the outside and cast in so that it's coming back at me, so I haven't cast over the fish, so he doesn't see this, get spooked. I mean, if you try to stand out in the river and fish to this spot, if you want to wade across, one again on the Waihi, this you'd be walking through reds likely. But on this river, you might think you could do it, but there's no way to get a good cast here and get a good drift down here, or cast from here and up and across. You're crossing pretty fast to slow seams. So really the best thing to do is stalk this edge from the side, stand out to the side, make a cast, only go, you know, fish as far as you can get, you can cast ahead of you without throwing line over the fish, then walk up 5 more feet and make another couple casts, right? Don't make long casts, short casts. Questions on this spot right here?
Hey, Troy, we've got a question. Tom asked, and if you bring this up later, we can probably wait until then, but we've been talking about the South Fork and showing some photos of the South Fork. How about the Boise River in town?
Yeah, so that's a great question. When I first moved to Boise, well, when I first bought a house down by the river in Boise, I think I found some golden stones or squalas. I don't have photos of those insects, but I have not seen a golden stone or a brown stone in the river for 20 years. We still have plenty of little yellow sallies, But has anybody, by show of hands, ever seen a Skwala on the Boise River in town? I haven't. I'm not saying they're not there.
Okay. I'll let those trickle in. There may be like a second or two of lag, so why don't we just move through, and we'll chime in and bring it back around if anybody's got info. We can quiz.
Yeah,
them.
I'd love that. No, there are some drainages where you'll find some occasional Skwalas, and I'll show you the major drainages with Skwalas up here and coming up in a couple slides.
Sounds good.
And so you will always find nearby rivers will have a few, but maybe not fishable numbers. If that South Fork of the Boise was open in April, it would be awesome because that's when most of the Skwalas come off, but it's closed.
Don't get any ideas.
Yeah, and don't get any ideas, but it is not as big a population of Skwalas as the Waihi or the Yuba or others. So matching the hatch, size matters, right? And size is the length of the body, not the tails, not the antenna. Right. So it's really, when we go to tie the fly, it's the size of the length of that shank. That's what we're really trying to get to. Right. And there are a lot of different hook styles and shanks that have made this harder than it should be. And some people will tie this on a 2XL hook. I do. A lot of people might tie it on a 3XL hook because it's technically a stonefly. Right. So you don't know if what hook they tied that on. So it's always good to get a sample of the bug and then hold your fly up next to it. Right now, I love these Bugometers because I take pictures of them and I keep them on my fishing log. So later I know what time the hatch happened, what color the bugs looked like, and what size they were because I have this photo. Right. So my fishing journal is filled with bug photos like this. Right. Make sure that you got sparse patterns. Right. And if you want a Bugometer, they're cheap, $4. Dry Fly Innovations, the only place that sells them. And they're if you'll take the time to collect an insect sample and then try to pick a fly that matches it, whether you use a Bugometer or not, you will be money ahead. But I can't tell you how many times Blueing Olive Hatch kicks me all the time because one day you fish it and it's a size 20, and the next day you come back and it's a size 18, and the next time you come back it's a size 22, and you come back and it's a size 16, all in successive days. And I'll look out there, of course, from 20 yards, Troy can tell that that's a size 22 versus a size 18. Not, but I think I can, right? All of us think we do. And so you tie on what worked last time, and the fish aren't taking it, or they're refusing it. You're like, wow, what's the matter? Finally you catch a sample and you look at it and you're like, oh, I'll be damned. They're size 16 today. That's really weird. Tie on a size 16 and it's money, right? So size matters. Enough of that. Some of my favorite dry fly patterns, right? Most patterns you buy, if you're going to buy a fly, there's some great patterns out there, but try to get something that's thin, right? A thin body, a thin wing, not these huge things, right? This is a pattern I tie that's just a yarn body. I don't want it to float. So I use a yarn body. It's not a poly yarn. It's a yarn body, right? And then over that, I've got an over of some tan foam, right? And then you can see I've made a bullet head out of that tan foam. And then I've made a yellow underneath the thorax, underneath the head there, because you saw the females, right? If we go back to the females, right? Back here, boom, boom, where is she? Right? A lot of yellow underneath. Right. So the same thing when I tie a fly, I like to have that same look. Right. You can see there's yellow underneath there. You can see that I've got an egg sac on the back end of her. So that's the kind of thing I like. I do like rubber legs. I do think they help. Right. The Skwala Meister off of, I think, Red's Fly Shop, it has a good pattern there. DFI, I've caught a lot of flies on their fish on their egg laying slowstone. The egg laying again is money. Right. It's similar design to mine in that it's got foam on the back. And so it rides really low. So it's a good pattern. So all those are good adult patterns, right? Typically, you don't want them too big. You'd rather be a little small, and the males even size smaller, right? If we're to look at rivers in the Northwest that have Skwalas, these are the ones you'll read about. I wish I could say that I'd fish them all. That would be a great road trip to start on the Yuba and then drive to the Yakima and then hit the Deschutes and hit the Hawaii, the South Fork of the Boise, then go over to the Bitterroot, Clark Fork, your Big Hole, keep going up in elevation until you get to the Upper Snake, and you could fish the Skwalas from January to to the end of March and end of May, right? So these are rivers that have the best ones. It's all driven by elevation and water temperature, right? Yuba, I've never been there. It's a long drainage. It has a long time that they're hatching. That's one of the rivers where it's not a hidden hatch. They're crawling all over you. The Yakima is next. It has late February. It starts depending on year. They're a similar elevation than us, but for some reason their bugs pop a little earlier. I haven't heard a good explanation about that. Both the Hawaii and the South Fork of the Boise are starting now. And they'll get even better into April. And again, there'll be these microclimates. If you learn your river well, you'll know that this run fishes first and then that run fishes last, right? So you can kind of milk those things, right? The Chutes has some that kind of spreads out. It's also a tailwater, so it's a long river, so you can find something in March and something into April. I've not fished that one. I would like to fish the Skwala hatch there. Madison, Jefferson, if we're going up into elevation, Clark Fork and the Bitterroot are real famous. And then the Big Hole, and you can actually get over to the Provo, has some Skwalas, I've been told. I have not tried them, but that'd be a great place to go, the first week of May. Like we need an excuse, right? So those are Skwala rivers to think about fishing and when you might fish them. So let's talk about timing. This is a hydrograph of the Clark Fork, which is a major river for Skwalas. And I learned this one the hard way the first time I went to the Bitterroot, and it was blown out, right? You get any kind of precip or warming up, you want warming up because it gets the bugs active. But if you get too much and it doesn't freeze that night, then the snow starts melting and you get blowouts. And all of a sudden, when you get blowouts, the snow melt cold, makes the water muddy, it makes the water cold, and it's no good. So you want to fish freestones when you can, but you got to watch for blowouts, right? And they can be very, very fickle. The nice thing about tailwaters is they're predictable, right? They have what's called the tailwater effect of water coming out, that you've got this big cushion of water underneath things on the South Fork of the Boise and the Oahe that's helping insulate the water outflows. So you've got some protection from blowouts as well as water temperature, right? The downside is water temperatures get held artificially low into the spring because the dam is insulating any warming as well. So be careful. And one of the hints in knowing the microclimates is the closer you get to the dam, the later the hatch is going to be. Here's an example of the South Fork of the Boise. I'm an engineer, so there's a lot of lines in the graph. So you can roll your eyes and close them if you have to, right? So our temperature zone we're looking at for Skwalas is somewhere around 44-ish up towards 50. You hit that and you got money, right? So we got three lines here. The blue one is water temperature coming out of Anderson Ranch. It's the bottom of a tailwater. Tailwater effect means that water drops to around 40. It's unlikely to get any colder unless you have a really low carryover year, because you got this big blanket of water keeping the cold out, right? Even if it's frozen on top. Anderson Ranch is pumping out 39-degree water. As it turns out, scientifically, 39 degrees is the densest water temperature, so it sinks to the bottom. That's why. Now, if you go down to Neal Bridge, you go 10 miles down from Anderson Ranch, you've got Danskin Bridge. You go down through the canyon another 16 miles, right? And now at the very back of the waters of Arrow Rock, you've got Neal Bridge, right? So we're 26 miles downstream. That's the difference here. That's how much solar warming there is, although realize the last 16 miles through a canyon, so you don't get as much. But you can start to see how those temperatures, they're cold because they're further downstream and the water's has more than 24 hours to get there, but they start warming up. And here we are, in early March, and those water temperatures are starting to get in towards the Skwala zone. We're starting to see 10-degree swings during the day. And we get here towards mid-March, right? And all of a sudden, we're in the Skwala zones in the afternoon every day, right? Now, this is 26 miles downstream, right? There'll be microclimates of warmer and cooler all the way up towards the dam. This is an example of how tailwaters warm or don't warm, right? So those are things that you want to take your thermometer and think about it, right? Freestone rivers, I've seen them swing 15 degrees in one day, right? So it's not uncommon as we get more and more sun to see these 10 to 15 degree swings on sunny days, right? If you have a warm day followed by a night that doesn't go below freezing, followed by another warm day, that's money, because now it didn't cool off last night and we kept some of the radiant heat in the water and then continued to warm it up further. So it's those repetitive days and not below freezing nights is where you really start warming. And that's when you get into your sweet hatch zones. Does this graph make sense? The points hopefully came across. And the Waihe's similar. I didn't put there's not as many temperature graphs, data sources on the Waihe, so I didn't put the one on the Waihe because it's somewhat speculative, but it's similar, right? It's similar, right? Some things to be thinking as you go out. I like to fish. You got to throw a pretty good sized bug, maybe a dropper with it. And you're going to mainly be throwing it with a long leader. So this is not a great time to use your 2 and 3 weights, right? You need something you can turn over. Maybe some wind's going to come up. So it's a good time to fish a 5 weight, 12 foot leader, 4X. So you can turn over that big bug, right? Don't miss out on the nymph migration. It's happening now. You've already missed part of it, but it's still going on, right? Fish a blue wing olive dropper or a midge dropper with it. Watch for those hidden hatch clues, right? We're looking for these bugs underneath rocks, right? Shucks under streamside rocks. All of a sudden, something that crawled off that for years I thought they were just spiders until I ran into them, a mini river since then. Check that water temperature when you get towards the afternoon. If it's 44, cut off your fly, your nymph, and it's time to start throwing a dry fly. Right now, if you're Nate Brumley, you did it all day anyway, right? Maybe you coax somebody up, but I like to nymph until the water temperature tells me otherwise. This is the time for your A game on stalking the sides for fish. Those fish are easy to spook. If you're clunking along, splashing along, making noise, you won't catch them. So we're talking stealth going up that thing. You're not wading in the water if you can avoid it, or if you're in the water, you're moving slow, right? So you got to stalk those edges. Make sure you have some egg laying patterns for later in the season, some skinny patterns, male patterns for early in the season, right? Don't slap that fly down or skitter it. These things dead drift, right? They are not flutterers. Now it's okay every now and then. You can try a skitter or twitch it type of thing, but where that's a great tactic when the egg laying females are out there for salmon flies and golden stones, it ain't for squalas. And we're not slapping it down in the middle of the river where golden stones would be laying. We're putting it along the bank, right? Those sunny days with sunny exposure, you can start with a adult squala if you want all day and put on a rainbow warrior dropper or a zebra midge dropper, and you don't have to fish a nymph all day if you don't want to, right? Because it is that time of year. I will wrap up with a couple things here. Again, the Waihe, the brown trout spawned starting in October. We did a red count over there in early December, and there were a lot of fish that were still spawning. We've tried to identify some of the major brown trout red areas with these signs that tell you, please keep your boots out through the end of March. Alvins are in the nest right now, coming out, or in some areas where they had late spawning fish, they're not out yet either. So, it's the same water that squalas are in. So when you go out to fish the squalas, I've shared some secrets with you. Do me a favor and try to be careful where you wade. The reds are not obvious anymore. They've silted in because of algae and other things in the system. So you won't see them, right? You won't know where they're at. So you've got to just keep your boots out of the river the most you can, right? If you're in riffle, if you go above the riffle and cross, or if you get down to the bottom and you get into 3 feet of water. So if it's crotch deep, you can cross. Fish are not going to be spawning deeper than 3 feet. So those are places you can cross safely, right? Do me the favor. We all want more fish. The South Fork, you don't have to worry about it. There's no browns on that river. You just have to worry about spooking your fish. at Boise Valley Fly Fishers, we're trying to promote people being responsible fly fishermen. We've been trying to come up with a creed, we call it, keep them wet and fill the net. Where keep them wet is trying to make sure those there's grip and grin photos, at least the fish is dripping wet, and more fish, more wet, more better. And fill the net is about, leave the place a little better than you found it. On your way, when you're done fishing, take your net, throw a few pieces of trash in there. You don't have to pick it all up. Just pick up a few things, right? If everybody picks up a little, it'll add up to a lot, right? So we've adopted that fill the net social media campaign that was started here locally, and we ask for you to help us, right? And there's more and more anglers out there. We've got to respect each other. If somebody's on that water first and you got there, darn, they beat me to it, right? If they're up at the top of the run, it doesn't look like they're moving anywhere, go ask them, you going to fish down the bottom? Do you mind if I fish down there? Or you going to, okay if I cross and fish the other side? Ask them. Most people will be so shocked, they'll be like, hey, no problem, man. But we got to respect each other and try to leave the place a little bit better, and then put the fish's needs first, right? Make sure that fish is revived and can swim away, and be there for somebody else to catch, right? So fill the net, keep them wet. As part of Leave It Better, one of the things right now is there's mono on the rivers. If you're fishing the Boise in town, you'll run into these wads. Help us get them off the river. It's nesting season for birds, and they're going to pick that up, and we get all sorts of birds that get entangled in this stuff and die, right? It's becoming an increasing problem. So help us get the mono off the river. Fly fishermen, we don't leave too much mono. It's a good thing to be aware of. But the biggest thing is if you walk by some, like, this was just a few weeks ago on the Boise River, this pile, pick it up. Fill your net with a few pieces of trash. You don't have to be a BVFF member. If you post a photo to our group Facebook page, George Butts will send you some free swag. It could be a sticker like up in the left-hand corner. It could be anything. So we're trying to encourage to lead by example, and part of leading by example is other people have to see you do it. Otherwise, they think there's some sort of magic fairy that comes and cleans after them. Right. So by posting these pictures on social media, we're trying to, one, reward the fishermen and say, good job for doing this. And others see it and it starts to become a trend. So help us do that. Trout Unlimited, one of the members forwarded this to me recently, worked Pescador on the fly, came up with these bags. They're just a mesh bag. You can send for one free. Pescadoronthefly.com. You have to pay shipping, but they'll send you one free. It's a great way to pick up trash if you want to carry that. I typically just use my net. It's a great way to take some trash off the river. Okay, and the last thing is Boise Valley Fly Fishers is looking at trying to expand how our impact is on trying to be a river steward. We're looking at the Living Lands Adopt a River program, where you adopt a mile of a rear shoreline, do a couple cleanups a year. We did a gravel augmentation last year down in Garden City, below Glenwood Bridge. We're looking at that section. It's not a done deal yet. We're still working on it, but I'd like to ask other people and organizations to consider joining. Just like TU was talking about, adopting a portion of the river upstream, right, up by Harris Ranch area, right? So if we all try to come together and clean up each a different piece of the river, it gets better and better and better, right? So please look into the program and consider that. And I guess I'll see you on the river. Go get yourself a Bugometer. Everybody needs one, right? It's simple, just carry it in your pocket, use it for making sure you have the right size fly. You can buy them, Dry Fly Innovations online is the only place that sells them. They're $4, right? And let's go fish. Right. Hope to see you on the river. What other questions do we have? How did I do on time?
You're great on time, Troy. Usually when we kind of pause and wrap things up, there are a couple of questions start to trickle in. That was a fantastic presentation. Thanks so much. If we don't get too many questions, I think it's only because that was rather comprehensive, and I think a couple of those points leave very little for debate or for wonder. I think this is a really cool experience to see what can commonly be seen as unnecessary separation and siloed, like to see private fishing clubs like BVFF and to see the Trout Unlimited and working together. And I love to see this collaborative and complementary focus on stewardship is really what it is. And I appreciate your notes there, Troy, there towards the end. That was a really cool way to wrap that up. Yeah, hey guys, now is the time. Ask away. You got anything? We didn't miss anything in our chat, that's for sure. And Troy, you have given us essentially everything except for which rock to stand on, as they say. So I'm going to loop in.
Well, I got a picture of the rock. If you know the rock, you know the rock.
I
would like to hear a few more questions from folks. That's the hardest thing doing this, and I know I probably talked way too fast because I don't have any feedback in the crowd. So to tell me to slow down, it's usually when I see eyes kind of open up wide, I slow down, but I don't get that, so I go into overdrive.
All right, Daryl, I brought you up here on screen on the spot. You got any questions here?
No, it was a great presentation. Thank you.
All right. Well, you guys know where to find us. We're just getting a lot of thank you and great presentations. So Troy, I think people appreciate it and definitely feel you on the live presentation features. And we're looking forward to more of those. And just from your vast experience, I'm sure there's more than a few things that we can maybe lean into you to give a few more of these. It does seem like you have a real soft spot for squalas.
It's a fun bug. And as we started out the pre-discussion with, we've all been at that point. Was it mythical? Is it real? Why do people get so excited about this? I don't even see the bug. And now that they know about it, let's hope that people will actually turn over a rock or two and go, oh my God, look at all those squalas.
I love it. Well, very cool. Troy, we're just getting a lot of thanks and appreciation for you, and same from us. And just going to bring a few of us up here on screen. We got Chris working over here in the corner and just going to drop out. And thanks a lot. And you have seen quite a few different contacts today. So you've got Boise Valley Fly Fishers. You have Troy's personal contact. Troy, why don't you repeat that one more time in case people want to reach out to you personally?
Yep, I'm going to go to the top again. If somebody wants a copy of that American Angler, you can email me through Boise Valley Fly Fishers Conservation, email conservation@BVFF, right? So that's, if you want to read more about that study and the article, I'll send you a copy of it. Just email me.
Love that. Unless anybody has anything else, I think it's probably about time to wrap it up. We'll see everybody later. Thanks a lot,
Troy.
You bet.
Thank you.